The kiss wasn't part of any plan. Maya Carter found herself cornered in the narrow service corridor of Bella Notte, pulse racing as the stranger in the tailored charcoal suit approached with urgent steps. His expression held a rawness she hadn't expected, vulnerability mixed with something close to fear. "I need your help," he said, his Korean accent softening the edges of his English. 30 seconds. That's all I'm asking. Every instinct told her to walk away from whatever chaos was about to unfold behind the upscale Italian restaurant where she'd been working double shifts for months. But something in the way his jaw tightened, the desperation flickering behind his controlled exterior, made her pause. "What kind of help?" she managed. He stepped closer, close enough that she caught the scent of expensive cologne and rain. "Trust me. Please." Then his hands framed her face with unexpected tenderness, and he whispered, "Forgive me," before his mouth found hers. The world tilted. Heat and urgency, the taste of whiskey and mint, the feeling of falling and being caught simultaneously. Her body reacted instinctively, leaning into him as footsteps echoed from the restaurant's rear entrance. Welcome back, friends. This is Prince of Afro-Korean stories, where passion, danger, and impossible romance intersect. Please keep sharing your ideas for future episodes. And kindly like, share, and subscribe, and activate notifications so you never miss our latest content. When he finally broke away, they were both breathing hard, and he was looking at her like she'd just rewritten his entire future. "Who are you?" she breathed. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Someone whose life you just changed. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Please let us know where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you these incredible stories." 3 hours before that moment, Maya's evening had been spectacularly terrible. The Saturday dinner rush at Bella Notte was always demanding, but tonight felt particularly brutal. 2 servers had called out, the kitchen was running behind, and her manager Vincent kept giving her pointed looks every time she couldn't keep up with her overloaded section. She needed this job desperately. Her younger sister's college tuition payment was due in 5 days, and Maya was still $200 short. Table 17 had remained empty most of the evening, a premium corner booth reserved for their most valued guests. Maya had just finished resetting the neighboring table when Vincent's voice took on that particular reverent tone he used for important clientele. "Mr. Jong, your table is prepared." She glanced up to see a man moving through the restaurant with the kind of presence that shifted the atmosphere. His dark suit fit perfectly, his movements deliberate and assured. Other diners' conversations dimmed as he passed. Following him was a young boy, perhaps 9 years old, absorbed in a handheld game console. The child shared his features, the same dark eyes and elegant bone structure, but where the man's face was unreadable, the boy's expression was openly curious. "Dad, can I get the pasta with the weird name?" the boy asked in slightly accented English. "Pappardelle," the man corrected gently. "And yes, Noah, anything you'd like." They settled into booth 17, the man positioning himself strategically with a clear view of the entire room. Maya recognized that particular awareness from growing up in her neighborhood, the constant vigilance of someone who understood danger intimately. She approached their table, summoning her professional smile despite her exhaustion. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. What can I get you to drink?" The man's gaze lifted to meet hers, and something shifted in his expression. His attention focused on her face with an intensity that felt different from the usual customer interaction, not invasive, but genuinely present. "Water for both of us," he said quietly, then hesitated over the wine list. "What would you recommend?" It was unusual. Men in expensive suits typically ordered without consultation. The Brunello is exceptional, Maya offered. Rich, complex, pairs beautifully with our braised short ribs. He nodded slowly. The Brunello, then. Thank you. As she walked away, she felt his gaze following her, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with attention. When she returned with their drinks, Noah looked up from his game with bright, inquisitive eyes. Do you live near here? He asked with childlike directness. Noah, his father said quietly, a gentle warning. It's fine, Maya smiled. I grew up about 15 minutes away. What about you two? We came from Seoul when I was little, Noah said proudly. But Dad says I'm American too now. Mr. Jong watched this exchange with something that looked like relief, as though his son's easy rapport with her had answered an unspoken question. Have you decided on your order? Maya asked. Pappardelle for him, Mr. Jong said. I'll have the short ribs you mentioned. As she wrote down their selections, her phone vibrated in her apron. A text from her sister Jasmine appeared on the screen when she glanced at it. Tuition deadline moved to Wednesday. Need $800. Her stomach dropped. Wednesday was 3 days away. Even with her best tips, she'd fall short by at least 200. Is everything all right? Mr. Jong's voice carried unexpected gentleness. She looked up, realizing her distress must have shown. Yes. Sorry. Family situation. He studied her briefly, then his own phone began buzzing insistently. His expression transformed as he read the screen, warmth draining away, replaced by something harder and more guarded. Dad? Noah sounded worried. Is Uncle Min calling again? Mr. Jong's jaw tightened visibly. Yes, but we're having dinner. It can wait. But the messages kept coming, each one deepening the tension in his shoulders. When Maya brought their food, Noah was chattering about his school project while his father stared at his phone like it contained a death sentence. This looks amazing, Noah said enthusiastically. Dad, you should try some. But Mr. Jong seemed barely aware of anything except the messages accumulating on his screen. Another notification arrived, and whatever it said made him go completely still. Throughout the evening, more messages came. Each one seemed to tighten an invisible noose. He barely touched his meal, instead watching the restaurant entrance with increasing tension. Then, precisely at 9:30, everything shifted. A group of well-dressed Korean men entered, moving with coordinated precision that suggested training or purpose. Behind them came an elderly man in an impeccable suit, silver hair perfectly styled, his expression radiating authority and displeasure. A young Korean woman in an elegant dress followed, beautiful and composed, her eyes cold and assessing. Mr. Jong's phone buzzed one final time. He read the message, and his face went blank, all emotion locked away. Noah, he said quietly, stay here. Don't move. But Dad, now. The authority in his voice left no room for argument. The conversation that followed was heated, conducted in rapid Korean that Maya couldn't understand but whose tone was unmistakable. The elderly man spoke sharply, gesturing emphatically. The young woman stood silently, observing everything with detached interest. Then the elderly man said something that made Mr. Jong's hands curl into fists. Maya was clearing a nearby table when she heard him respond in English, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet restaurant. I said no, Uncle. I won't do it. The elderly man's face darkened. He gestured toward the young woman and continued in Korean, his meaning clear even without translation. This is your obligation. Mr. Jong shook his head firmly. I don't care about obligation. I won't marry someone I don't love. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Every conversation in the restaurant had stopped, all eyes drawn to the confrontation. The elderly man stepped closer, voice dropping to a threatening whisper in Korean. Whatever he said made Mr. Jong go pale. That's when his eyes found Maya across the room, and something desperate and wild flickered in their depths. "Excuse me," Mr. Jong called out, his voice projecting across the silent restaurant. "Maya, could you come here, please?" Every head turned toward her. The elderly man frowned, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Maya's heart began racing as she crossed the floor, feeling every gaze tracking her movement. "Yes, sir? Is something wrong?" Mr. Jong looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but his expression held an apology. "I need to ask you something unusual," he said. "And I need you to trust me." Before she could respond, he stepped closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. "These people want to force me into an arranged marriage," he whispered urgently. "The only way out is if I'm already involved with someone. I know this is insane, but would you be willing to pretend to be my girlfriend? Just for a few minutes?" Maya stared at him. "You want me to what?" "I'll compensate you," he said quickly. "Whatever you need. I saw your reaction to that message earlier. If it's financial trouble, I can help." Her mind spun. This was absolutely insane. But she thought about Jasmine's tuition, about the eviction notice hidden in her bag, about the desperation in his eyes that somehow felt genuine. "Okay," she whispered. Relief flooded his features. "Thank you. Just follow my lead." He turned back to the group, sliding his arm around Maya's waist with surprising naturalness. "Uncle," he said in English, his voice carrying new confidence. "I'd like to introduce someone very important to me. This is Maya Carter. My girlfriend." The words hit the group like a physical shock. The young woman's composure cracked slightly. The elderly man's face went through several shades of crimson. "Jean," the elderly man said, his accent thick with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" "Jean. So that was his name." "The meaning," Jean said calmly, "is that I'm already in love with someone. Someone I chose for myself." His uncle launched into rapid Korean, voice rising with each sentence. Jean responded in the same language, but his tone remained steady, almost defiant. The argument escalated, growing more heated. Other diners watched openly now. Then his uncle said something that made Jin's entire body go rigid. "English," Jean said sharply. "If you're going to insult her, have the courage to do it in a language she understands." His uncle's smile was cold. "Very well. I was merely pointing out that this person is clearly unsuitable for someone of your position." "A waitress, Jean? Really?" Maya felt heat flood her face. She started to step away, but Jin's arm tightened around her. "Careful, uncle," Jean said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're talking about the woman I love." The words were supposed to be performance, part of the act. But something in his delivery made them feel real. "Love?" His uncle laughed harshly. "This is infatuation at best. Marry Sue Jean as planned, and keep your little waitress as a mistress if you must." The casual cruelty of it struck Maya like a blow. Jean went very still beside her. "Apologize," he said quietly. "I will do no such thing. This charade has gone on long enough." That's when Jean moved. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Maya and his uncle, his posture shifting into something that made every person nearby take an instinctive step back. "Let me be absolutely clear," he said, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to make the air itself grow heavy. Maya is under my protection. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me directly. His uncle's face paled. Whatever power dynamic existed between them, Jean had just shifted it decisively. You would threaten your own family over this girl? I would protect the woman I love from anyone, Jean said simply. Including family. The silence stretched taut as wire. Then the young woman, Soo-Jean, who had been watching everything with calculating eyes, spoke up. I think, she said carefully, that a man willing to stand up to his family for love might actually be worth marrying. But not to me. She smiled slightly. I have no interest in being second choice to a waitress who clearly has captured his heart. She turned to Jin's uncle. The engagement is off. With that, she walked out of the restaurant, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Jin's uncle stared after her, then turned back to his nephew with fury and something that might have been grudging respect warring in his expression. This isn't finished, he said in Korean. Yes, it is, Jean replied in English. His uncle and entourage departed without another word, but Maya could see the promise of future consequences in the elderly man's eyes. The restaurant slowly returned to normal, but Maya remained frozen, processing what had just happened. Maya, Jean said softly, his arm still around her waist. Are you okay? She looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. The expensive suit, the way others deferred to him, the casual authority with which he'd justified his family. Who are you? She whispered. His expression grew guarded. Someone you probably shouldn't get involved with. Too late for that, don't you think? Before he could respond, a small voice piped up from booth 17. Dad, is Maya going to be my new mom? They both turned to see Noah watching them with bright, hopeful eyes. Jin's face cycled through several expressions: panic, embarrassment, something softer. It's complicated, buddy, he said gently. But you like her, Noah said with devastating directness. I can tell. Maya's heart clenched. When was the last time someone had noticed something that small about her? Actually, Maya interrupted, surprising herself. I think we need to talk. Privately. The alley behind Bella Nate was quiet, lit only by the security light mounted above the back exit. The moment they were alone, the pretense fell away. My name is Jean Jong, he began. I run what you might call a business empire. Some of it's legitimate. Some of it operates in gray areas, and some of it would be very difficult to explain to authorities. Maya's stomach dropped. You're telling me you're a criminal? I'm telling you I'm a businessman who operates in a world where the lines are often blurred, he said matter-of-factly. My family has been in this business for 3 generations. I inherited it when my father passed, including all the obligations. Including arranged marriages. He ran a hand through his hair. My uncle believes that marrying Soo-Jean would strengthen our position. More territory, more influence, more power. And you don't want that? I want my son to grow up in a world where he has choices, Jean said quietly. Where he can be whatever makes him happy instead of inheriting a legacy built on violence and obligation. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. So you used me, she said, but without real anger. Yes, and I'm sorry for that. He stepped closer. But Maya, when I looked at you tonight, when you talked to Noah like he mattered, when you treated me like a person instead of a title or a threat, I remembered what it felt like to want something real. Her heart was beating too fast. This is crazy. I don't know anything about your world. Good, he said firmly. It's not a world anyone should have to know about. But you're in it. I'm trying to get out of it, or at least transform it into something better. He paused. My uncle won't give up easily. Tonight was just the opening move. Maya felt a chill. What does that mean? What kind of threats? The kind that could involve anyone I care about. The implication hung between them. By claiming her as his girlfriend, he'd made her a target. What have you done? She whispered. I put you in danger, he said bluntly. And I hate myself for it. But I can also protect you, if you'll let me. Protect me how? Security, a safe place to stay, financial support so you don't have to worry about whatever was in that message that upset you earlier. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. But it also felt like selling herself. I'm not a kept woman, she said firmly. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to let me help while we figure out what happens next. What happens next? Jean was quiet for a moment. I don't know. This was supposed to be temporary, but now, he looked at her with something that made her breath catch. Now I can't stop thinking about what it felt like to have you in my arms. The words hit her like a physical blow. You don't know me, she said weakly. Then let me learn. Before she could respond, the back door burst open. Vincent appeared, looking frantic. Maya, there are men inside asking about you. Expensive suits, serious faces. They're making customers nervous. Jean went rigid. What kind of men? They're sitting near table 12, but they keep looking toward booth 17 where the kid is. Jean was already moving. They're watching Noah. They rushed back into the restaurant. Maya immediately spotted the men Vincent had mentioned, 3 Korean men in dark suits, positioned strategically around the dining room. Noah was still in booth 17, but he looked frightened now, clearly aware something was wrong. Jean slid into the booth beside his son, his movements casual but his voice urgent. Hey buddy, how about we take the rest of your dinner to go? Are those men here because of what happened earlier? Noah asked quietly. Jin's jaw tightened. His son was too perceptive for his own good. Maybe, but don't worry about it, okay? As Jean signaled for the check, one of the men stood and approached their table. He spoke in Korean, his tone respectful but firm. Jean responded in the same language, but Maya could hear the tension underlying his calm words. The man glanced at Noah, then at Maya, and said something else. Jin's response was sharp, final. The man nodded and returned to his table, but he didn't leave. What did he say? Maya asked quietly. He reminded me that family is important, Jean said grimly. And that children need stability. The threat was unmistakable. Comply, or Noah's safety might be compromised. There has to be another way, she said quietly. There is. Jean looked at her with an expression equal parts hope and desperation. But it would require you to trust me completely. What are you asking? I'm asking you to make this real. To actually be my girlfriend, at least publicly, long enough for me to consolidate power and push back against my uncle's influence. The offer hung in the air between them, safety, security, a chance to be part of something bigger than her small, struggling existence. But also danger, deception, and a world she didn't understand. And if I say no? Then I'll make sure you're safe anyway. But Noah and he looked at his son. We'll figure out another way. Maya looked at Noah, who was watching her with hopeful eyes, this little boy who had already started thinking of her as part of his life. Then she looked at Jean, who was offering her everything she'd never dared to want. I need time to think, she said. Of course. But Maya, he reached across the table and touched her hand gently. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that tonight changed something for me. Before she could respond, one of the men at the other table stood again. This time, he walked directly to their booth. Mr. Jong, he said in accented English. Your uncle would like to speak with you. Privately. Jin's hand tightened on Maya's. The man's gaze flicked to Noah, and something cold passed across his features. He was very insistent, the man said quietly. The threat was unmistakable now. Jin closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression had changed. The businessman was gone, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. Noah, he said calmly, go with Maya to the restroom. Wait there until I come get you. But Dad, now. The authority in his voice broke no argument. Noah slid out of the booth, and Maya automatically took his hand. In the restroom, Noah looked up at her with worried eyes. Is my dad in trouble? He asked. Maya knelt down to his level. I think your dad is trying to protect you. Are you going to help him? The question caught her off guard. I don't know if I can. You made him smile, Noah said simply. He doesn't smile very much anymore. Not since Mom died. Maya's heart clenched. When did your mom die, sweetheart? 2 years ago. She got sick. Noah's voice was matter of fact, but she could see the lingering sadness. Dad says she's watching over us, but I think he's still really sad about it. Suddenly, everything made more sense. Jin's desperation to avoid an arranged marriage, his protectiveness over his son, the way he'd looked at her like she was a lifeline. The bathroom door opened, and Jin appeared. His expression was grim but controlled. Everything okay? Maya asked. For now. But we need to leave. All of us. He looked at her directly. I know you need time to think, but I'm asking you to come with us tonight. Just until we know it's safe. Maya looked at Noah, who was watching her with hopeful eyes, then at Jin, who was trying to hide his own desperation. She thought about her tiny apartment with its broken heater and overdue bills, about Jasmine's tuition and her own uncertain future. And she thought about the way Jin had stepped between her and his uncle's insults, the way he looked at his son with such fierce love. Okay, she said quietly. But just for tonight. Relief flooded Jin's face. Thank you. As they left the restaurant together, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a story much bigger and more dangerous than anything she'd ever imagined. But for the first time in years, she wasn't facing it alone. Jin's penthouse was nothing like Maya had expected. She'd imagined something cold and modern, all glass and steel. Instead, she found herself in a space that was warm and lived in, with comfortable furniture, family photos on every surface, and Noah's artwork covering the refrigerator. Noah, go get ready for bed, Jin said gently. School tomorrow. But I want to show Maya my room. Tomorrow, buddy. It's already past your bedtime. Noah hugged Maya goodnight, a gesture so natural and trusting that it made her chest tight, then disappeared down a hallway. If this hooked you already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment because what happens next will absolutely shatter your expectations. Alone with Jin, the reality of her situation hit her fully. I should call in sick tomorrow, she said. You don't have to worry about work, Jin said quietly. I spoke to Vincent. You're taking a leave of absence. Paid. She spun around. You can't just, I can. And I did. Maya, after tonight, It's not safe for you to go back to your normal routine. My uncle will have people watching the restaurant, your apartment, anywhere you might go. For how long? I don't know. Until I can convince him that this relationship is real and permanent, or until I can consolidate enough power to push back effectively. And how long will that take? Months, maybe longer. The weight of what she'd agreed to settled on her shoulders. I can't do this. Yes, you can. He stepped closer. You're stronger than you know, Maya. I saw it tonight, the way you stood up to my uncle's insults, the way you protected Noah without even thinking about it. This isn't my world, Jean. I don't know how to be the kind of woman who belongs here. You don't have to be anyone other than who you are. He moved closer. That's what drew me to you in the first place. You're genuine in a world full of people playing roles. But this is a role. You're asking me to pretend to be your girlfriend. Am I? His voice was quiet, intense. Because it didn't feel like pretending when I kissed you tonight. The memory hit her like a physical blow, the taste of him, the way her body had responded without permission. That was just adrenaline, she said weakly. Was it? He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Because I've been in plenty of high-stress situations, and I've never wanted to kiss anyone the way I wanted to kiss you. Her breath caught. Jean, and I know this is crazy. I know I have no right to ask this of you. He paused. But Maya, what if it doesn't have to be pretend? Before she could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her heart sank. It's my sister. Take it, Jean said, stepping back. Hey, Jasmine, she answered. Maya, thank God. I've been calling you for hours. Where are you? I'm with a friend. What's wrong? I went by your apartment to drop off some papers, and there were guys there, guys in expensive suits, asking your neighbors about you. Maya's blood went cold. She looked at Jean, who had gone very still. What kind of questions? She asked carefully. Where you work, who you spend time with, if you have a boyfriend. Mrs. Lopez said they seemed really interested in your schedule. Jean was already moving, pulling out his phone and typing rapidly. Jasmine, listen to me carefully, Maya said. I need you to stay away from my apartment for a while. And if anyone approaches you asking about me, don't tell them anything. Maya, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'm involved in something complicated, she said finally. But I'm safe. I just need you to trust me, okay? This is about a guy, isn't it? Jasmine's voice sharpened. Maya, if someone is threatening you, no one is threatening me. The lie felt necessary. I just need some time to sort things out, okay? After she hung up, Jean looked at her with grim sympathy. They're moving fast, he said. Faster than I expected. They're watching my sister now. Probably just gathering information. But Maya, this proves what I was afraid of, you can't go back to your normal life. Not until this is resolved. The reality of it hit her like a wave, her apartment, her job, her independence. All of it was gone, at least temporarily. I need some air, she said, moving toward the balcony doors. The city lights below seemed impossibly far away, like she was looking down at a life she used to live but could never return to. Jean appeared beside her, silent for a moment. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I never wanted it to go this far, this fast. But you knew it would, she said without looking at him. You knew that claiming me would make me a target. Yes. At least he was honest. So what happens now? she asked. I can put you somewhere safe. A completely different city, a new identity if necessary, that's one option. What's the other? Jean was quiet for a long moment. The other option is that we stop pretending this is temporary. That we make this real, build something together that's strong enough to withstand whatever my uncle throws at us. She turned to look at him. You're talking about a real relationship with someone you've known for exactly one evening. I'm talking about taking a chance on something that feels right, even if the timing is wrong. He met her eyes. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you recommended that wine. Jean, you don't know me. You don't know that I have student loans I'll be paying off until I'm 50. You don't know that I haven't had a real relationship in 3 years because I work too much to date. Then tell me, he said simply. Tell me all of it. I want to know. Why? Because for the first time in years, I met someone who looked at me and saw a person instead of a position. Someone who was kind to my son without expecting anything in return. He stepped closer. Because when I kissed you tonight, it felt like coming home. The words hung between them, honest and raw and terrifying. This is crazy, she whispered. The best things usually are. Before she could respond, the sound of breaking glass came from inside the apartment. Jean was moving before she could process what was happening, pushing her behind him as he pulled a weapon from somewhere she hadn't seen him carrying one. Stay here, he ordered. Don't move. He disappeared into the apartment, leaving her alone on the balcony with her heart hammering. Then she heard Noah's voice, high and scared. Dad? Every instinct she had screamed at her to run toward that sound. The decision was made for her when she heard Jin's voice, calm but commanding. Maya, it's okay. Come inside. She found him in the living room, weapon still in his hand but lowered, standing protectively in front of Noah. The coffee table was overturned, and broken glass was scattered across the floor. But they were alone. What happened? She asked. Someone threw a brick through the window, Jean said grimly. With a message. He handed her a piece of paper. The message was in Korean, but someone had written an English translation underneath. Family obligations cannot be avoided forever. They were here. Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. Long enough to make their point. Jin's expression was grim. Noah was pressed against his father's side, still in his pajamas, eyes wide with fear. Dad, why did someone break our window? Jean secured his weapon and knelt down to his son's level. Some people are upset with me about a business decision. But it's going to be okay, I promise. He stood and pulled out his phone, speaking in rapid Korean. The conversation was brief but intense. When he hung up, he looked at Maya with an expression she couldn't read. Pack whatever you need, he said. We're leaving. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. Somewhere my uncle can't reach us while I figure out how to end this. 20 minutes later, they were in Jin's car, a sleek black sedan. Noah was in the back seat, clutching a stuffed animal and trying to be brave. I don't have anything, Maya said, realizing she had nothing to pack. We'll get you whatever you need, Jean said without hesitation. As they drove through the city, Maya watched familiar neighborhoods pass by and felt like she was leaving her entire life behind. Where exactly are we going? She asked. I have a house outside the city. Secure, private. My uncle knows about it, but he also knows that attacking it would be an act of war. Act of war? There are rules in my world, Maya. Lines that even family doesn't cross, attacking someone's private residence, threatening their child. Those are declarations of total war. And your uncle is willing to risk that? He's desperate. The marriage alliance was worth millions to him. Without it, he loses face, loses influence, loses money. Jean glanced at her. Desperate people make dangerous choices. The house was beautiful, a modern structure nestled in the hills, all natural wood and expansive windows. Security lights illuminated the driveway as they approached. This place is special, Jean said as he carried a sleeping Noah inside. I designed it myself, had it built after Noah was born. It was supposed to be our family retreat. The interior was warm and inviting, with family photos covering the mantel, Jean and a beautiful Korean woman, Noah as a baby, candid shots of family gatherings. She was lovely, Maya said, looking at a photo of Noah's mother. She was. Jin's voice was soft with memory. She would have liked you. How can you know that? Because she believed that family was about choice, not blood. That love was about seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. He looked at Maya directly. She would have seen what I see in you. And what's that? Strength, kindness, the courage to stand up for what's right even when it's scary. He paused. The ability to make a broken man remember what it feels like to hope. Jean, she started, but he shook his head. I know this is overwhelming. I know I'm asking too much too fast. He stepped closer. But Maya, I need you to know that this isn't just about the marriage arrangement anymore. This is about the fact that I'm falling in love with you, real love, the kind that changes everything. Her heart stopped. You can't know that. It's been one day. Sometimes one day is enough. Sometimes you meet someone and you just know. He reached up and touched her face gently. I know this is crazy. I know the timing is terrible and the circumstances are impossible. But Maya, what if we stopped fighting this and just let it happen? She looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been afraid to hope for, genuine affection, respect, the promise of being seen and valued and loved. What if it doesn't work, she whispered. What if it does? Before she could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. It's my uncle. He answered the phone, speaking in Korean. The conversation was brief but heated. When he hung up, his face was grim. What did he say? Maya asked. He's giving me 24 hours to reconsider. After that, he's going to make this personal. What does that mean? It means he's going to come after you directly. And Noah. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just playing a role anymore. She was a target. Maybe I should leave, she said quietly. Let you handle this without worrying about me. No. His voice was firm, final. Running won't solve this. He'll find you, and when he does, I won't be there to protect you. So what do we do? Jean was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a new determination. We stop playing defense. We make this real, make it public, make it impossible for him to break us apart. How? He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. We get married. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Think about it, Maya. If we're married, your family. Attacking you would be attacking me directly, which even my uncle wouldn't risk. Jean, that's insane. We can't get married, we barely know each other. We know enough. He stepped closer. We know that we care about each other. We know that we want to protect Noah. We know that there's something real between us. He paused. Marriage doesn't have to be forever if you don't want it to be. But right now, it's the only way to keep you safe and give us the time we need to build something real. She stared at him, trying to process what he was asking. You want me to marry you to save us both from your uncle? I want you to marry me because I love you, he said simply. The fact that it also solves our immediate problem is just a bonus. You don't love me. You can't. It's been one day. Then explain this. He cupped her face in his hands. Explain why I can't stop thinking about you. Why the thought of you being hurt makes me want to burn down the world. His thumb brushed across her lips. Explain why when I kissed you, it felt like coming home. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of his gaze, the sincerity in his voice. This is crazy, she whispered. The best things usually are, he repeated softly. When she opened her eyes, she saw everything she'd been afraid to want reflected in his expression: love, commitment, the promise of a future she'd never dared to imagine. If I say yes, she said quietly, if I marry you, what happens then? Then we build a life together. We protect Noah. We face down my uncle, and we see what this thing between us can become. He paused. And if it doesn't work out, then at least we'll know we tried, that we chose love over fear. She looked at this man who was offering her everything: protection, security, love, a family, and realized that somewhere in the space of one impossible day, she had started to fall for him too. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Yes. I'll marry you. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise, warm and bright and full of promise. You won't regret this, he said, pulling her into his arms. I already do, she said, but she was smiling too. This is the craziest thing I've ever done. Good, he murmured against her hair. Crazy looks good on you. As he held her, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Real, genuine hope for a future that included love and family and happiness. And when Jean tilted her chin up and kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise, she kissed him back with everything she had, choosing love over fear, hope over safety. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, she whispered back, and meant it. Tomorrow they would face his uncle, the complications of merging their worlds. But tonight they had each other. And for now, that was enough. The wedding happened faster than Maya could have imagined. Within 48 hours, Jean had arranged everything: a small ceremony at the house, efficient witnesses, and enough security to protect a head of state. It wasn't the wedding she'd dreamed of as a little girl, but it was real, and it was theirs. Jasmine arrived that morning, still confused but supportive after Jean had personally called to explain the situation. Her sister had been skeptical until she saw the way Jean looked at Maya, like she was the most precious thing in the world. You sure about this? Jasmine asked as she helped Maya get ready in the guest bedroom. No, Maya said honestly, adjusting the simple white dress Jean had somehow procured in her exact size. But I'm sure about him. He better be good to you, Jasmine said fiercely. Or Korean Mafia boss or not, he'll answer to me. She hugged her sister tightly. I love you. I love you too, sis. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. They stood in the garden overlooking the hills, with Noah as ring bearer and Jasmine walking her down the makeshift aisle. Jean wore a perfectly tailored black suit, but his eyes never left her face. When the officiant asked for their vows, Jean spoke first. Maya, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 3 days ago, I was a man going through the motions of living. You changed that. You made me remember what it felt like to hope, to want something more than just survival. He took her hands in his. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to build a life with you that's worthy of the gift you've given me. I promise to love you, not just for who you are today, but for who you're becoming, who we're becoming together. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she spoke her own vows. Jean, you've given me something I never thought I'd have, a family. Not just you and Noah, but the feeling of belonging somewhere, of being chosen. Her voice caught slightly. I promise to stand by you, to face whatever comes together, to love you and Noah with everything I have. When they kissed to seal their marriage, it felt different from that first desperate kiss in the restaurant alley. This was a promise, a beginning, a choice they were making together. Noah cheered loudly, and even Jasmine was smiling. But the celebration was short-lived. As they were cutting the small cake, Jin's phone rang. His expression darkened as he answered. What? Maya asked when he hung up. My uncle. He's calling a family meeting tonight. Jin's jaw was tight. He wants to meet my new wife. The meeting was held at a traditional Korean restaurant that Jin's family had been using for business for decades. As they walked in, Maya in an elegant black dress, Jin in another perfect suit, she could feel the weight of every gaze in the room. The family was assembled around a large table, Jin's uncle, several other older Korean men, and a few younger ones who looked like they might be cousins or business associates. The atmosphere was tense, formal, distinctly unwelcoming. Jin's uncle stood as they approached, his expression cold but polite. So, he said in accented English. This is the woman who has stolen my nephew's sense of duty. Uncle, Jin said calmly, I'd like you to meet my wife, Maya Jong. The use of her new name sent a thrill through her even in these circumstances. Mrs. Jong, his uncle said with a slight bow that somehow managed to be both respectful and insulting. How unexpected. Mr. Min, Maya replied, matching his formal tone. Thank you for welcoming me into the family. They sat down to what was ostensibly a family dinner but felt more like a business negotiation. The conversation flowed between English and Korean, with Jin translating when necessary. It became clear that his uncle was testing her, asking pointed questions about her background, her intentions, her understanding of what she'd married into. Tell me, Mrs. Jong, he said during the main course. What do you know about our family's business? I know that it's complicated, Maya said carefully. And I know that Jin is working to build something better for the next generation. Ah, yes. The next generation. His uncle's smile was sharp. And what about children of your own? Surely you understand the importance of continuing the family line, to point out how quickly this marriage had happened. But before she could answer, Jin spoke up. Our family plans are our own business, uncle. Just as our marriage is our own choice. Choice? His uncle repeated, as if the word left a bad taste in his mouth. In my day, we understood duty, obligation, the good of the family over personal desires. And look where that got us, Jin said quietly. 3 generations of marriages without love. Children raised by others. Women treated like property to be traded. The table went very quiet. I want something different for my son, Jin continued. I want him to see what real partnership looks like, what it means to choose someone and be chosen in return. His uncle's face was stone. Pretty words. But this woman, he gestured dismissively toward Maya. What does she bring to this family besides her exotic appeal? The casual racism hit like a slap. But before Maya could respond, Jin was on his feet. Careful, uncle, he said, his voice deadly quiet. You're talking about my wife. I'm talking about a waitress who has somehow convinced you to throw away everything our family has built. No. Jean said firmly. You're talking about the woman who makes my son laugh again. Who sees the man I want to be instead of just the legacy I inherited. Who had the courage to stand here tonight and face down a room full of people who want her gone. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. Maya is my wife. She is Noah's mother now. She is part of this family whether you accept it or not. And anyone who disrespects her disrespects me directly. The silence stretched taut. Then his uncle spoke, his voice cold with finality. Very well. But understand this, nephew, you have made your choice. Now live with the consequences. He stood and walked out, followed by most of the other family members. Only one person remained, a younger man who looked like he might be Jin's cousin. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think you're brave. Both of you. He nodded to Maya respectfully before leaving them alone at the table. Well, Maya said after a moment, that went better than expected. Jean looked at her in surprise, then started laughing, really laughing, the kind that comes from relief and exhaustion and the absurdity of everything. How can you joke about this? He asked. Because the alternative is crying, she said honestly. And I refused to give him the satisfaction. Jean reached across the table and took her hand. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry you had to sit through that. I'm sorry my family is, your family, she interrupted gently, is you and Noah. The rest of them, they'll either come around or they won't. But it doesn't change what we have. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. How did I get so lucky? He murmured. I ask myself the same question every day. As they left the restaurant together, Maya felt something she hadn't expected, relief. The worst was over. They'd faced down his uncle, declared their commitment publicly, and survived. Whatever came next, they would face it together. So, she said as they got into the car, what now? Now, Jean said, starting the engine, we go home. We tuck Noah into bed, and we start building our life together. Just like that? Just like that. As they drove through the city toward their new home, Maya thought about how much her life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, she'd been a struggling waitress with no prospects and no hope. Now she was married to a man who loved her, stepmother to a boy who had already claimed her heart, and part of a family that was complicated and dangerous, but undeniably real. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. Time had passed since that first impossible night at Belanate, and Maya still sometimes couldn't believe this was her life. She stood in the kitchen of their family home, watching Jean help Noah with his homework at the table. At 13, Noah was all legs and curiosity, asking questions about everything and challenging his father's answers with the confidence of a boy who had never doubted he was loved. Mom, tell Dad that Shakespeare isn't boring, Noah called out. Your father thinks Shakespeare is boring? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow at her husband. I think, Jean said carefully, that there are more interesting ways to spend an evening. That's literally every action movie you've ever watched, Maya pointed out. Noah grinned. She's got you there, Dad. Jean caught Maya's eye and smiled, the same smile that had made her heart skip that first night, though now it was warmed by years of shared mornings and quiet evenings. The transition hadn't been easy. Jin's uncle had fought the marriage viciously. But eventually they'd reached a cold peace. Jean had consolidated his power, gradually moving the family business toward legitimate enterprises. Maya had gone back to school, finishing her degree with Jin's support. She now ran the charitable foundation they'd established together, focusing on education for underprivileged youth. "How was your day?" Jean asked as she joined them at the table. "Good. The scholarship program approved 20 new recipients for next semester." She smiled. "Including Jasmine." Jin's expression warmed. Her sister had been skeptical at first, but Jean had won her over with patience and genuine care. "That's wonderful," Jean said. "Speaking of working hard," Maya said, looking at Noah's homework, "how's the Shakespeare coming along?" "Better now that I understand it's basically a really old soap opera with sword fights," Noah said cheerfully. Jean laughed, a sound that still made Maya's heart flutter. "Where did you get that interpretation?" "Mom explained it to me earlier," Noah said. "Your mother is a very wise woman," Jean said, reaching over to squeeze Maya's hand. "The wisest," Noah agreed solemnly. "She married you, didn't she?" Maya burst out laughing at Jin's mock-offended expression. "You're both terrible." "But you love us anyway," Noah said, grinning. "Unfortunately, yes," she said, ruffling his hair. "Even when you gang up on me." As the evening wound down and Noah headed off to finish his homework in his room, Maya and Jean cleaned up the kitchen together, a routine they'd developed over the years, comfortable and domestic and perfect in its ordinariness. "Do you ever miss it?" Jean asked quietly as they worked. "Your old life, I mean. The simplicity of it." It was a question he asked sometimes, usually when he was feeling guilty about how dramatically he'd changed her world. "No," she said, and meant it. "Do you know what I was doing this time 4 years ago? Working a double shift, coming home to an empty apartment, falling asleep to the sound of my neighbors fighting through thin walls. I was surviving, not living." She dried her hands and turned to face him. She gestured around the kitchen, toward the sound of Noah's music playing from his room, toward the life they'd built together. "This is living. This is everything I never knew I wanted." Jean pulled her into his arms, holding her close in the way that still made her feel safe and cherished and home. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "More every day." "I love you too," she whispered back. "Even if you do think Shakespeare is boring." He laughed, pulling back to look at her. "Maybe you can change my mind. We could read Romeo and Juliet together. Only if you promise not to make fun of the balcony scene." "I make no such promises," he said, grinning. As they headed upstairs together, Maya caught a glimpse of their wedding photo on the hallway table, a small, intimate ceremony with just family and close friends, but filled with more joy and love than she'd thought possible. She thought about that scared, overwhelmed woman who had agreed to a fake relationship to help a stranger avoid an arranged marriage. Who could never have imagined that one desperate kiss would lead to this, a real marriage, a loving family, a life beyond her wildest dreams. Sometimes the best things really were crazy. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, crazy led you exactly where you were meant to be. We've reached the conclusion of our compelling African-Korean story. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove love can heal the deepest wounds. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Your support means everything to me. Comment below and tell us what part of this story touched your heart the most.